Are you someone who has been a target of negative vegan stereotypes? Or maybe you're someone who said to yourself, I could never go vegan. Or maybe you're someone who said to yourself, God, vegans are just so annoying. Either way, there are a lot of stereotypes and myths out there about vegans and veganism, many of them harmful. I had the idea to make this video, but I didn't quite feel that I had enough to make a video. So I put out a question sticker on Instagram to see if I could kind of crowdsource some more myths and stereotypes. And sometimes when I do these question stickers, I don't get that many responses. This time I was blown away by the number of responses that I got and also by the caliber of responses that I got. After that, I was like, I definitely have enough to make a video. I am incorporating people's responses with the myths that I had already come up with. I checked with everyone who submitted their responses to see if they wanted me to name them, shout them out. Some people did, some people didn't, so that's why I'll be naming some, but not others. So let's get into this discussion. We're gonna start with kind of more like light and fluffy few ones, and then we're gonna get into a really hard-hitting one. These aren't in order of like least harmful to most harmful or anything like that. It's just kind of a nice little medley. So the first misconception, a very common one, tale as old as time as a vegan to hear this or be affected by this, is that vegans only eat vegetables or vegans only eat salads. The number of times I've heard people say things like, I could never go vegan because I just don't like salads that much, or I just don't like vegetables that much. And then my IG pal Katie also submitted one that was very similar to this one, which is that vegan food is like rabbit food, or I couldn't be vegan because I don't like lettuce. This is a huge misconception, that vegans either only eat vegetables or predominantly eat vegetables, or that if you are vegan, you have to love vegetables and be okay with eating them for like every meal. And then this translates to people you know, only offering kind of like vegetable dishes and side dishes to vegans, you know, at a restaurant or at a dinner party or event or something like that, and expecting them to be happy with that or to be satisfied with that. Personally, and I think many vegans, I don't really particularly like vegetables or even lettuce any more than I would say any of the omnivores in my life. I love certain vegetables, I really don't like other ones. I like certain types of vegetable dishes, I really don't like other types of them. I am not satisfied eating a full meal of just vegetables. I don't think anybody should be expected to be. Just like the average person, I like a balance in my food, in my meals, of veggies and carbs and starches and protein and sauces. I feel like I've said this before on here, but I think what a lot of people do when they think about going vegan is they think about a meal that they would currently eat. So let's say someone would have a dinner that was some type of animal protein, some type of carb, and some type of veggie. They imagine that meal and then they just subtract the meat from it. And then they think, oh, if I were vegan, this is what I would have to eat, like just the starch and just the veggie. And I think a lot of these same people will imagine going to the restaurants that they currently go to, and they're imagining what would be available to them at those restaurants, which oftentimes the only things available are, you know, side dishes, vegetables, salads, etc. But the reality is, if you went vegan, you probably wouldn't continue going to the same restaurants. You'd seek out other restaurants that actually have interesting vegan options, or you'd seek out vegan restaurants, or maybe you'd start cooking for yourself more. I think this is a very limiting belief that it's really depressing to me when I think about it. Like when I would think about going vegan and just thinking about minus, 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 I'm just subtracting all this food, but I wasn't thinking about all the different foods that I'd be adding in. I think most omnivores just don't realize how much variety of food we eat as vegans, and so I'll just say I eat soy, like tofu and tempeh. I eat lots of legumes like lentils, beans, chickpeas, split peas. I also eat mock meats. I also eat, you know, grains that also have protein like quinoa. I eat, you know, regular pasta. I eat brown rice pasta. I eat pastas that have protein in them. I eat potatoes, I eat popcorn, I eat lots of sauces, I eat lots of snacks, in addition to also eating fruits and veggies. But I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination that vegetables are like the biggest part of what I eat. Okay, the second misconception, and this is pretty similar to the first one, but is that vegans don't eat junk food. I think a lot of people conflate veganism with the people who go plant-based for health, which is a thing, and that's fine, and vegan diets can be as healthy or as unhealthy as one wants them to be. The only thing that vegan means is that there are no, you know, animal products or animal byproducts in the diet. Or, you know, ideally in the entire lifestyle. You know, there's the age-old thing that people say of like, you could be vegan and just eat Oreos. You know, you can be a junk food vegan. Not only can we eat junk food as vegans, but it's totally okay to do so. I think you guys who watch my channel a lot know that I am a snack queen. I absolutely love snacks. I love vegan junk food. I try to eat lots of whole plant foods as well because they are very healthy, but I also love my junk food, and I need to have a lot of fun with the food that I eat, and that helps me not feel restricted in any way, because of course vegans do cut out a lot of foods, but that doesn't mean we need to feel restricted, and so there's no rule that says vegans can't eat junk food. Now we're gonna get into a really big one, that probably the biggest stereotype about vegans. And this one was submitted by Petrie, my follower on Instagram, and it is that vegans think they're better than everyone. This is such a good one. So this, I would say, is without a doubt the biggest thing that you hear about vegans, the biggest negative reaction to vegans, whether it's a myth, whether it's a stereotype, whether it's a misconception. A lot of people think this about vegans. This is what I would say if people ask me, do you think you're better than me because you're vegan? Think about something in your life that you have a very strong moral opinion on, or that you take a very strong moral stance on. Something in the world, anything. Something that maybe you've gone to protests about, something that you've donated money to, something that, you know, really outrages you when you hear about it. It could be anything. There's a whole plethora of things that I can think about right now that people in my life feel passionately about. Now, if you were to meet a person who didn't think that this moral thing that you feel very strongly about, didn't really think that this thing was a problem or a big deal, and not only that, but if you met someone that actively engaged in a behavior every single day that directly went against that moral thing that you feel so passionately about, wouldn't you feel that your moral position on that thing was better than that person's moral position on that thing? We take moral stances because we feel that, you know, believing in this thing or fighting for this thing or defending this thing is better than not defending it. That's why we took the moral stance. Otherwise we would have their moral stance, which is just that they don't care about it. So that's what I would say. Do I think that I'm a better human being than someone who's not vegan? No. But do I think on this moral topic that my moral beliefs are better than theirs? Of course I do. And I've been on both sides of it, and I know how it feels to not have this moral belief and live in a way that's opposite to how I live now. And I know what it's like to have this moral belief kind of starting to form, but still not be fully in alignment with it. I know what it's like to be fully in alignment with it, which I am now. And I discussed this topic pretty thoroughly in the Why People Hate Vegans video, or rather the article that I talked about in that video discussed it pretty in depth. So definitely check that out if you'd like a little more in-depth conversation on that. Okay, the next misconception, I think this is I feel pretty strongly about this one, is that you have to be 100% vegan or nothing. I think this is a harmful misconception. And this might be controversial to some people. I don't think that if you want to give veganism a try, that you have to do it 100%. I think you do whatever you can, you do the best you can, you try to resolve that moral conflict within you, and you do whatever it is that you're capable of doing at that time, whether it's mentally, physically, financially. I think a lot of people stop themselves from going vegan because they think they can't do it 100%. How many conversations have we all had with people where they're like, well, I could probably go vegan, I just could never give up this, and I think I'd still want to have this on the weekends, and then do that. That's fine. You don't need to be totally 100%, and I can only imagine the number of people that have tried going vegan or said they were vegan but then did something imperfect and then been shamed by someone who is vegan who was also trying to do the right thing but maybe came across as a little bit abrasive, and the person just thought, I don't want to deal with getting shamed by people because I'm not doing things perfectly, and maybe gave up on it. I personally think that being an imperfect vegan is far better than being an omnivore who tried it once but then got shamed and gave up on it completely. And that doesn't mean that we can't, you know, still educate people or enlighten people who maybe don't realize that what they're doing is causing harm, but I think there's a way to do it that is taking an encouraging approach rather than shaming and being like, how dare you say you're vegan when you're not 100% doing it right. The next one was submitted by my friend Kelly, and it is that vegans have weak immune systems or always seem to be sick. Now, I did a bunch of research on this topic and I feel like I could do a whole video on it, and I might because I feel like it's a really good time of year for it. Just a few highlights. Being vegan doesn't automatically make you sick more. I think anybody who is nutritionally deficient or not treating their bodies properly, not getting enough sleep, overworking themselves, is more prone to getting sick than someone who's not. And this was from Health Shots, kind of like the bottom line on this topic to me. Consuming generous amounts of antioxidants such as vitamins C and E, as well as various phytochemicals, can help prevent free radical damage to immune cells, and plant-based diets are loaded with antioxidants. Moreover, vegetarians and vegans consume veggies and fruits in higher quantities than non-vegetarians, which we just talked about. We definitely consume higher plant foods, that's for sure, which serves well for their immune systems. They also have higher consumption of plant sterols, aka phytosterols, which may also improve immune function. And phytosterols are found in unrefined plant oils as well as nuts, seeds, whole grains, and legumes. So all foods that vegans eat lots of. So the bottom line is the more plant foods you eat, it would appear the stronger your immune system will be. But again, like I said, if someone is not getting proper nutrition in one way or another, not getting proper sleep, not, you know, taking care of themselves in any way, then they are going to get sick. There's lots of other interesting points that could be made on this topic, but for the sake of time, we're gonna put that aside and maybe do a video in the future. Okay, this next one is that soy blocks testosterone and estrogen. This was submitted by my follower Daniel. So this is one that I feel like I could really get into the weeds on. I feel like there are entire YouTube channels that dedicate to discussing this, and this is a very sort of very important but very male affecting stereotype. And so it's not something that I've experienced as much, but I think it's very important to dispel or discuss because of the biases against soy, especially having to do with masculinity and all of that tied in. The reality is, from what I've researched, there need to be more studies done. There isn't that much compelling research one way or the other. Some studies have shown consuming soy did lower testosterone levels. Other studies conflicted with that. The studies that did show soy having an adverse effect on testosterone, in these studies, the people were consuming soy protein isolate rather than whole soy foods. So, you know, maybe it wasn't super realistic as to what someone would eat on a vegan diet. This is a quote from an article in Preferred Men's Medical, which I will link below. It says, while this claim is widely circulated across the internet, it's important to understand that these studies are outdated and inflated. For most men, soy has no effect whatsoever on their testosterone levels, both in a positive and negative sense. Soy is a legume that contains compounds called isoflavones. Soy isoflavones are thought to be estrogen-like and act as phytoestrogens in the body. In short, they can build estrogen receptors and mimic the hormone's effects. Even though some sources affirm this notion, other reports debunked it, saying that soy consumption doesn't promote any untoward effects on certain subpopulations and is completely safe for consumption, except for those who are allergic to soy protein. And then this article gets into a lot more of the science and the nutritional aspects. So definitely, if you want to read more about that, head to that link in the description box. Soy and tofu especially are really linked to the emasculation of men. You know, just look at like the soy boy meme and like the soy boy culture online, which I actually find fucking hilarious. Like, I sometimes call Paul my soy boy in like a loving way. And again, this was discussed in the Why People Hate Vegans video, and there was a really funny comment. I forget who commented it, but something about like lentil man or something, like soy boy and lentil man. This one is definitely harmful to the furthering of the vegan movement, especially when it comes to men, because I think men are just kind of so confused about, you know, whether or not they can or should, or whether or not soy is harmful to them. But the consensus seems to be that it is not harmful. This is another one from Petrie, which is that veganism is predominantly white, wealthy, or just for hippies. This is another topic that we could go into a whole deep dive about, and I think there are a lot of accounts online that talk about veganism and white veganism and, you know, veganism as it relates to colonialism. This is a very important topic, and I'm going to discuss it with the disclaimer that I'm not going to be able to give it the time that it deserves. But I think a lot of people know this, but maybe a lot of people don't know this, that the roots of what we now know as veganism trace back hundreds of years to various non-white cultures. This information was from an article on atmos.earth. The roots of veganism can trace back to ancient Indian and West Asian cultures. One of the earliest followers of what we now consider a vegan diet was Arab philosopher and poet al-Ma'ari, who abstained from animal products for his health and beliefs on the transmitigation of souls and animal welfare. Buddhism and Jainism are some of the earliest known religions to espouse the principles of nonviolence toward animals. And then, of course, the modern day definition of and name for veganism came from a white man in England in 1951, but today there are many non-white cultures who embrace the tenets of what we now know as veganism, you know, Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, Rastafarianism being just a few. The reality is, of course, you do not have to be white or wealthy to be vegan, but representation is definitely still an issue, as well as accessibility. Many people, even if they wanted to be vegan, cannot be because they just do not have access to the proper types of food or the proper education, whether that is like literally don't have physical access to it or don't have financial aspect, or both. And I think these are topics that we need to be very sensitive about when discussing veganism and, you know, how easy or how not easy it is to go vegan, especially as white privileged people on the internet. Okay, another great one from Petrie, which is that vegans care more about animals than humans. This is such a good one. This is definitely one that I have thought of before, that I have heard people say about vegans many times before. So I've heard people say things like, you know, I won't go vegan or I won't care about the animals until the, you know, human rights and social justice issues of the world are resolved. Like, that's my priority, and then we can worry about the animals. My opinion on this, and why I think it comes across like vegans care more about animals than people sometimes, is that for the most part, most people in the world have an understanding that human rights problems are problems, right? Most people acknowledge this human rights issue is an issue. Of course, there are exceptions. Some people will deny certain issues or not acknowledge that things are problems, but that it's not really a fight to get people to be like, oh yeah, like women should have equal rights to men, or these people are being exploited and that is wrong. Animal suffering, however, is still widely accepted as not only not a problem, but just the norm and totally okay and normal, and most humans participate in it. So that's why vegans often think of themselves or call themselves the voice for the voiceless, because these are creatures that are not able to speak up for themselves in a way that we can understand, and that just don't have nearly as many allies and advocates as, you know, many disadvantaged human populations do. Furthermore, I think the people who don't think animal suffering is important to acknowledge compared to human suffering often completely miss the point that there is a lot of human suffering and exploitation connected with animal suffering. For me, I sort of feel like all suffering and all exploitation is interconnected. I don't think for a second that a person who would unflinchingly exploit an animal would really have any moral qualms about also exploiting a human. Exploitation is done for profit as it relates to both animals and humans. You better believe that where there are animals being exploited, there are also numerous humans being exploited, and for that to be ignored, I think is a huge oversight of a lot of the social justice minded. This one's from Blake, and it's that vegans are only left-leaning liberals. This is a really good one. At first I was like, wait, isn't that mostly what vegans are? And then Blake started like telling me stories about people he knows, and then I was like, wait a minute, I know some people that don't fall in this category. So I think that, again, as we talked about in the Why People Hate Vegans videos, anti-vegan rhetoric is often associated with right-leaning political believers, but I think that there are many vegans who do not fall in one of two political categories. Vegans are open to questioning the status quo, as we have done in a big way to become vegan in the first place. And so it's not super surprising to me that at least some of these people would also be open to questioning the political status quo. I personally know vegans who fall in more of a gray area politically, or honestly even more right-leaning. There is also a Facebook group and Instagram page, unclear if they're connected, called Vegans for Trump. I am not sure if it's a joke or not, but it doesn't seem to be. And you can go and look at these pages for yourselves. Suffice to say that not all vegans are left-leaning liberals. And the last misconception or myth, and this is a really good one, this one was submitted by a follower, is that you can't be plus-sized and vegan. This misconception is really harmful because I think that it could potentially discourage people with larger bodies or that fall into a plus size category from going vegan because either they don't think that there's a place for them in the movement or they don't see themselves represented in the movement at all. And that's why I am so obsessed with Lizzo's out proud vegan representation. She is really showing people that there is no one prescribed body type for vegans. Obviously, this is a stereotype that I think disproportionately affects larger sized vegans. I can only imagine that vegans who are bigger may potentially get comments from people saying things like, oh, I thought vegans were supposed to be thin. That must be really shitty and difficult to deal with. And I don't know, for certain people, maybe that would negatively affect them or make them feel like they're doing something wrong, or, you know, why even stay vegan if I'm not the correct body type for veganism. Like I said, I think this misconception can be very harmful to either people who are considering going vegan and are larger, or are larger or plus size vegans. I think body size should be completely left out from any conversations really ever. Someone's body is none of our business. Why their body is the way it is none of our business. There's no prescribed body type for vegans, and this is a stereotype that really needs to be broken. So that's it. Those were my 10 vegan myths slash stereotypes, some of which I debunked, some of which I maybe confirmed, but in a way that makes more sense or is a little bit less harsh. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if, you know, what you thought of all these misconceptions. If you've had your own experiences, if you have any other misconceptions and things that have affected you as a vegan. If you're not vegan, maybe hopefully I was able to make you think a little bit differently about some of your own thoughts and maybe your own misconceptions about vegans and veganism. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe for more of my content, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye!